Have you given up chicken marsala because you don't want it to use up all of your bites, points, and calories? Well, I may have a solution for you here. This is a recipe for chicken marsala that I got from the WW or Weight Watchers website. I haven't tried it yet, but I've got my fingers crossed. I'll be giving our review of this at the end of the video. But for now, if you're interested in seeing how this is done, stick around because it's coming up next. Hello and welcome to my kitchen. My name's Roy. I'm a home cook and amateur baker, and I'm here on this channel sharing recipes that have helped me to lose over 125 pounds, whether those recipes are mine or someone else's. Now, as you heard from the intro, this is not one of mine. This is one that I found from Weight Watchers, WW. I don't know, I heard they went back to Weight Watchers. I don't know, whatever it is now, this is from them. And I am doing their version of chicken marsala. Now there are a few ingredients missing that I would expect to see in a marsala. I have not made this before, so I'm curious to see how we're gonna like it in comparison to a marsala. I may, at the end, recommend some changes, but I'm doing it exactly as they said, well, for the most part, and we'll see how it is. Now, I'm going to be serving this tonight with some pasta, but you could serve it with some potatoes, mashed cauliflower. You can serve it over rice. You can serve it as you like it. But chicken marsala is one of my favorites, so I'm going to kind of use this as a jumping off point. Hopefully we like it just as is. But if not, I may come up with my own recipe and add that to my blog, even though I may not do another video for chicken marsala since I'm doing this one. But first, let's go over the ingredients. I have here 2 chicken breasts. Now I've cut one of those through the middle into a cutlet. I didn't cut the other one yet. I figured I'd do it on camera, just in case you haven't seen me do this before. And they recommended 1 pound of chicken breast, 4 ounces each. Those are kind of hard to come by these days because all of these chicken breasts are much larger than that. So I cut them into cutlets, and a lot of other recipes do that as well. I have here 8 ounces of mushrooms, and those have been washed and sliced. Yes, I do wash my mushrooms. I watched Alton Brown and he said, do you know what mushrooms grow in? You should definitely be washing them. This little dry brush thing, no thank you. It doesn't absorb that much liquid, so I do that and then I slice them. I could have bought the ones that are pre-sliced, but I do prefer slicing them myself. Here I have 1 1/4 cup of beef broth, and that is divided. There's going to be 3/4 of a cup that's going into one part of the recipe, and the other half cup is going into another part. Here I have 1/2 cup of Marsala wine. I don't recommend changing that up, deciding that, well, I have some red on hand or what have you. Not that that wouldn't be good on its own, but it's not going to be chicken marsala. You're using a Marsala wine to make marsala. And this is the one that I'm using, Taylor. This is only $6 a bottle, so that's my type of deal. Here I have 2 teaspoons of olive oil, and you know I don't often cook with oil. I usually use cooking spray. I'm going to do it, as I said, the way they recommend doing it, and we'll see. I may decide it doesn't really need it because there's no flour in this recipe, so there's nothing to make like a little roux type of deal. If you decide to remove the olive oil, it will reduce the overall bites and points by 1, so that is an option, but it's really kind of low bite, so I figured I'd give it a shot with the olive oil. Here I have 1 1/2 tablespoons of cornstarch, and I'm going to be mixing that in later with the 1/2 cup of the beef broth. Here I have 1 teaspoon of dried thyme, 1/2 teaspoon of table salt, and 1/4 teaspoon of black pepper. So those are all of the ingredients The only slight change I am going to make is they have you put all of the oil in first when you put in the mushrooms. I'm going to save a little bit, about half, for when I put in the chicken breasts, because I'm not too sure that I shouldn't have a little bit of oil left for those. But that is the only minor change I plan on making, unless there are changes that I decide to make after we've tried it. But I am going to give you a review of this meal at the end of this video, and I'll let you know then if I recommend removing anything, adding anything, or what have you. But for now, let me shuffle a few things around and we'll get started. All right, so first, I'm going to show you how to cut the chicken breast into cutlets in case you haven't seen this part. It goes pretty quickly. I have my knife and I keep my hand on the counter. I keep my pinky finger against the counter to keep me steady. Otherwise, my hands would be going all over the place. So that's just to help guide me as I'm moving. So I press down on the top. I go in at about the halfway point and just go back and forth. And I'm aiming slightly upward so that I don't end up slicing down into the breast. And there we have 2 cutlets. And then I'm going to take the thyme, salt, and pepper and mix those all together because they want you to season all of the chicken breasts with this. So I'm just going to mix this. Now this comes up in step 2, really. I'm just doing it now because I like to be prepared. And I figure I already have the chicken breasts on the cutting board, might as well do it now. And as I've mentioned before, you always want to season from up high, especially with salt, because it will distribute more evenly. If you're putting it on down here, you're going to get little clumps. By going up here, see how evenly it's spreading all over the chicken breasts? That is what you're looking for. And then flip them and do the same thing on the other side. All right, so now I'm going to move my chicken breasts off to the side, bring in my mushrooms and the oil. And they want you to start off by putting the olive oil in there. I am going to start with that, but as I said, I'm not going to use it all because later I have to put the chicken in, and I'd rather make sure the mushrooms didn't absorb all of the oil and there was none left for the chicken. So I'll put in about half, set the rest of that aside. Then we're going to toss in all of our mushrooms and just stir that around, let that get coated with the oil, spread that oil around. And now we just have to cook this down until they start to release their moisture. And the pan is on medium high. That's the suggested temperature from WW. So now we're just going to cook these, stirring occasionally for about 5 minutes until they've kind of softened a little bit and they've released their moisture. So give me 5 minutes and we'll move on. All right, so it's been 5 minutes and you can see a lot of the moisture has come out. They've wilted a little bit and they have gotten a little bit of color, and that is exactly what you're looking for. So now what we need to do is push all of our mushrooms off to the edge of the pan so we make room for our chicken breasts. And now I'm going to add in that other bit of oil that I left out earlier just to give me some extra insurance on the chicken. And I'm just going to arrange my little cutlets in the pan. Now I'll usually, when I have this many, go with the thick side of one being next to the thinner side of another as it tapers, so that way I get them to fit all in here like this. And now we're going to cook our chicken breasts about 2 to 3 minutes per side, and you don't have to worry too much about them being done at this point because we are going to be cooking them a little bit longer in some of our liquid. All right, so it's been about halfway through. It's been maybe 2 minutes. I'm just going to flip them in the opposite direction because if the heat is too centralized in the center of the pan, then that outer edge wasn't getting as much heat. So I just like to give them a little revolution on each cook. And one thing I did want to mention, I've mentioned this before, but if you've ever had problems with your meat sticking to your pan, even if it's a nonstick pan, it is because it's not ready to flip. If you need to move something and you go to move it and it's still adhering to the pan, that's its way of saying, I'm not ready to go. It's kind of like when Paul is rushing me to get ready and get out of the house. It's not going to work. You have to wait until it's ready, and then you can easily flip it. You'll know the difference. If you test it and it starts to hold a little bit, don't force it, just give it another moment, and it will release once it's ready to go. So now I'm gonna flip these over to the other side. So now this one did not get much color. So what I'm going to do is move them around a little bit so they're in different positions, and it will get a little more color. I should have put on the join where I put the two burners on together, and that way I would have known the whole pan was getting hot, but it is what it is. I'm gonna join that now. I'll give these another 2 minutes. Turn them, give them a little rotation for that color to be evenly distributed, and then we'll be back. So it's been about 3 minutes. I'm gonna check this guy. Okay, he's got some color on this side. So I'm just gonna flip them one more time. And now what I need to do is add in the Marsala wine and hopefully not spill it. And once that's in there, you want to kind of scrape up any brown bits from the bottom of the pan. And we're going to let this simmer for just about a minute. All right, so it's been about a minute. And I'm going to take the 3/4 cup of beef broth and add that in. And you'll see that it dies down pretty quickly, but it will start to come back up to a simmer. And that's what we're looking for. And I am going to turn these so that their thicker parts are towards the center of the pan, just to make sure that that thicker part is cooked through. All right, so our beef broth is now starting to simmer. So we're gonna let these simmer for 8 minutes until they are cooked through. And I will turn them, even though it doesn't say that in the recipe, about halfway through, just to make sure that that other side gets cooked through as well. But 8 minutes and I'll be back. All right, so these have been cooking for 8 minutes. I'm going to now take the chicken and put it onto a plate and then keep it warm while we finish up the sauce. I'm gonna keep that warm by putting a piece of foil on top and just pressing that down. Now they call that tenting. If you've ever seen like tent your meat, I don't know why they don't call it blanketing, because it's more like a blanket, but anyway, our sauce has started to thicken, but we need it a little thicker because we're not using the cream. We're also not using shallots, which I find unusual, but like I said, I'm going with the flow here. So we're gonna add our cornstarch to the 1/2 cup of beef broth and just whisk that in to combine it, and then pour it into our sauce in the pan. And now we're just going to cook this until it thickens up. It's only gonna take about a minute. As you can see, it's already starting to thicken slightly. And honestly, I think you could get away with less cornstarch, but like I said, I'm gonna reserve judgment. Okay, that is done. I'm gonna turn that off. And I'm going to pour the sauce. Actually, this sauce is a little thick. I'm going to thin it out with a little more beef broth because this is a little gluey. I definitely think you could get away with less cornstarch because this is a little thick. And just stir this through to warm up that cold beef broth and to get it a little thinner. All right, so that looks much better to me. It's a little looser. Yeah, that's one of the changes I would make. But again, I'm reserving judgment, although I did make that change right here, so I guess I didn't reserve too much judgment. Then I'm just going to pour the sauce all over the chicken. I probably ended up adding another 1/3 of a cup or so of the beef broth to get it to the right consistency. So you can either add more beef broth or reduce the cornstarch. But there you have it, WW's Chicken Marsala. I hope that we enjoy this, but as I said, I'll give you a review at the end. But before that, I assume you're going to want to know about those nutrition facts. So for one of these breasts and 1/4 of the sauce, it is going to be 2 Better Balanced Bites or Old Blue Points or current points, because as I said, I did get it from the WW site. They gave the points, so I actually know it's 2 points on their current plan. But if you are following calories, the calories for 1 serving of this would be 276. And if you are following macros, the fat would be 8.3 grams. The saturated fat would be 1.7 grams. The protein would be 19.8 grams. The carbs would be 30.9 grams. The fiber would be 2 grams. And sugars would be 1.7 grams for one serving of this, which, as I said, is 1 breast and 1/4 of the sauce. Now, if you enjoyed this video and this recipe, I hope that you will do the usual and like, subscribe, comment, share, and hit that notification bell for the next time I upload any sort of video. Also, I will link to the recipe on the WW site. I cannot write it out in the description box because it would be copyrighted since it is their recipe, but I will link directly to it down below. Also down there is links to my Amazon storefront and a few other things, including my social media, my Instagram, and 3 Facebook groups that I'm part of. So check out that description box for all sorts of information. Now, this is usually where I would say until next time, bye. But I will be back in just a second to give a review. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, the reviews are in, and they are very good. We both enjoyed the chicken marsala. I made it over pasta. One problem is I did have to add more of the beef broth afterwards. I'd also been having it sit there for a little while, which was part of the reason. But it had almost enough sauce for it to be on top of pasta. So I might want a little more sauce. So maybe I would double the beef broth and keep the cornstarch the same, just so that I had more sauce for whatever I'm serving it with. But overall, we really enjoyed it. I think I would also add maybe a tablespoon of light butter, just because that marsala has that creaminess to it. And because we're not using any cream, it might be worth adding a tablespoon of butter, and I probably would leave out the oil and just use cooking spray. I didn't think the oil really made much of a difference. So to recap, I would probably do without the oil in the beginning for cooking. I would use cooking spray. I wouldn't double the beef broth. I would maybe do 2 cups of beef broth and 1/2 cup of either almond milk or fat-free 1/2 and 1/2. And I would add a little bit of butter, light butter at the end, just to give it a more silky feel. But as is, it really is delicious. So if you don't want to make any changes, you'll still enjoy it, trust me. All right, so that wraps up my review and this video. So until next time, bye.